Welcome everyone to 20EA's latest show. I'm your host, Paul Jamieson, and I'm delighted to say we've got a bit of a different format today. We're often guilty of concentrating on the English market when discussing the UK property market, and especially London. And today we're going to knock that on its head, and we're not going to discuss London at all. We're going to touch on England slightly, but I'm delighted to say we are represented by the rest of the United Kingdom today. So we've got representatives from Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and we're going to concentrate on these countries, and we're going to keep it light-hearted and have a bit of an estate agency game show. So hopefully this will work, bear with us. So before I tell you how that's going to work, let me introduce you to my expert panel, my guests. So perhaps let's start with John. So John, can you just explain who you are, who you work for and the market you're in?
Yep, my name is John Boyle. I'm Director of Research and Strategy at Rettie's. That's an independent property company. Main office in Edinburgh, but we serve most of Scotland. Edinburgh, Glasgow, offices also in St Andrews, down in the borders. We've got an English base in Berwick that tends to operate cross-border. And I've been there, 13 years now. So it's, I've seen the kind of the swings and the roundabouts of the market in that time.
Great, well, welcome to the show. Kelly, you next.
I'm Kelly Gardner. I'm a director at FBM Estate Agents in South West Wales. We've got 4 offices that cover the whole of Pembrokeshire, branch a little bit into Carmarthenshire as well. We've sales and a lettings department, and the company was established in 1833, and I've only been there for 19 years.
Great, and a special thank you to Mary Lou, actually, who's you'll notice isn't actually joining us in studio. Now, Mary Lou very kindly stepped in last minute, and unfortunately, due to British Airways, when she turned up to Belfast Airport today, they kindly cancelled her flight last minute. And so she's rushed back to her office to join us via Zoom. So Mary Lou, thanks for joining us. Do you want to just do a little intro?
Yes, no problem. So sorry I couldn't make it, but as you say, it is British Airways' fault. My name's Mary Lou Press, and I'm a partner in an estate agency in Downpatrick in Northern Ireland called Alexander, Reid and Frazer. We're a bit old school, where we deal in every single aspect of the property industry. That's sales, lettings, agriculture, compulsory purchase, quite a large scope of things. I've been in the industry for 23 years, which feels like more than a lifetime. And I'm also the president-elect for Property Mark NAEA.
My name's Stuart. I work for TwentyEA and have done for the last 30 odd years. As part of that, the last 20 years, we've been in the estate agency field, so quite a long pedigree, but not an estate agent personally, and I'm here to make up the numbers and representing England.
Yeah, so as I say, we will touch on England, but that's not the purpose of today. So thank you, Stuart, for joining us as always. So, so the ground rules, we're going to run a game show today. The plan is to pit each of your countries against each other. We've prepared a number of metrics that we're going to discuss, and there'll obviously be discussion points around that. But we're going to score points for each round. So we're going to obviously look at England, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales. There'll be 5 points for the winner if you win that round, 3 points for second place, 2 points, and then 1 point for the loser of each round. So let's see how each country will do. So we're going to start with the sales market and specifically look at completion prices. So what we've done is we've looked at completion prices in August 2024. And perhaps unsurprisingly, England is off to a winning start in terms of house property values and completion prices. So in August 24, which is the latest kind of stats we've got from the HPI, England, and when I refer to England, we're excluding London. So this is everywhere outside London. The average completion price is 281,000. In second place, we've got Wales at 222,000. In third place, Scotland, who's just under about £30 under 200,000. In the final spot, we've got Northern Ireland at 185,000. So a bit of a difference there. It's probably not something we're surprised about. What that does mean, though, is probably the ability to earn or commission or fees in the various countries probably differs from England and then to the other end of the spectrum in Northern Ireland. Perhaps we can just discuss fees and commissions, because it's it's been a hot topic for many years. Kelly, I'll perhaps start with you. How's the kind of fee levels in Wales and particularly your area?
So we had a good internal conversation about this about 18 months ago, and post-COVID the market had become hugely competitive fees-wise. Sales were much easier to come by. Agents were slashing prices just to ensure that sale. So we found ourselves back at a 1% norm. Anything above that to the consumer was outrageous. So we really had a conversation and decided that we now needed to look at increasing that to try and combat some of the increasing costs that we were facing, the offices, increasing wages, etc. And so we've actively increased that now up to about an average of about 1.35, 1.4 for us at FBM. I know that the national average varies, county to county, country to country, but we had an internal drive on that, and it's resulted in higher fees. We've needed it really.
Yeah, great. And Mary Lou, I'll turn to you next. So are fees competitive in Northern Ireland like they are elsewhere?
Very much so. I actually had been shown a price that was advertised by an agent in Northern Ireland, which was, there are some very low prices out there. But with such high demand in Northern Ireland, there's no reason why fees have to be so low, especially with the amount of effort that we go into to actually get a sale across the line, which you touch base on within this report, showing how long it takes to sell a house and all the conveyancing and things. But fees, generally most agents are anything from 1%. There's little to none, I would say, in Northern Ireland above 1%.
Right, okay.
Some do go as low as, the advert I saw was £555 plus that.
Wow. Yeah. It doesn't sound very sustainable, but yeah.
No.
It's a race to the bottom in that respect. John, I know you're not kind of a practicing estate agent as such, but have you got anything to add to kind of the fee level or commission levels in Scotland?
Yeah, it's something that we do look into. So our market tends to be 250,000 and above. Typically fees will be about 1 to 1.5%. You can do deals though where you can say, well, if we get an extra 10% on your house price, can we increase the fee to 2.5% or 3%? So you can do a deal with the vendor. Very competitive markets like West End of Glasgow or Central Glasgow, where there's a lot of agents competing for the same market share. You're getting rates down to 0.8, 0.75. So there's a kind of a geographical difference as well.
Yeah, okay, great. Well, let's move on to completion price growth, I suppose, because obviously we expect English house prices to be more, but obviously if I'm a vendor of a property in whichever country I am, what I'm probably interested in is the rate of growth or what my house was worth 12 months ago. So in that respect, it's a complete role reversal. So in last place now is England. So England, again, August prices year on year have grown 2.4%. So still positive growth, but the least amount of growth. We've got Wales coming in third, so 3.5% year-on-year growth. Scotland, just over a touch over 5% growth. And winning this round, we've got Northern Ireland. So August price inflation is 6.4%. Just generally, you'll notice that there is kind of pleasant house price growth in every country of the UK, which there's many commentators thought there'd be a massive price reductions, and there's lots going on in the world and lots of things happening, which actually it just shows how resilient I think again the property market is. Mm-hmm. The fact that we are seeing kind of steady house price growth in every region, which is good. So, John, to you, are these results surprising to you, or what is it kind of what you were forecasting?
Yeah, they were around about what we forecast. I think we forecast about 3%, and it depends, of course, what index you look at. But you've got it up there at around about 5% in the HPI. It's a demand supply imbalance. So demand's increasing because we've got household growth in Scotland. As we do in the rest of the UK. We've had earnings growth as well. House prices very much a function of earnings, and we've got restricted supply. So supply levels are nothing like what they were back in 2007, 2008. Property coming onto the market in Scotland averages about 100,000 or so properties a year that get sold, transacted through the register. And that's dropped back over the last couple of years. After the pandemic, new build in particular has been hit because they've had the supply side shock as well as the demand side shock with the rise in construction costs, etc. New build sales are now down to typically about 90 to 95,000 a year in Scotland, which is a bit below that 10-year average of about 100,000. So you've got the kind of the supply pressure on supply at the same time as rising demand and rising earnings. So ergo, prices are going to edge up.
Yeah, great. And Stuart, have you got anything to add on kind of prices?
Well, it's just to be expected, really, isn't it? I suppose, in terms of, I'm just glad they're positive. In the end of the day, I mean, there was lots of industry commentators predicting that we wouldn't be in that position before now, but it's probably like everything, just to echo John's words. In terms of the fact that where you get too much demand chasing not enough supply, that's the issue that we're going to get. And until somebody sorts it out with a massive house building program or something happens which is a shock to the system, I think that we can expect prices to rise more modestly in the future, but definitely to rise, not to fall.
Yeah, great. And Mary Lou, I'll come to you. So obviously, it appears like there's some kind of good house price growth in Northern Ireland, but I just perhaps want to touch on data more generally in Northern Ireland. We were having a chat off air, and obviously you have your own land registry system in Northern Ireland, and I think how to be kind, it's probably a little bit antiquated, more antiquated than the rest of the UK, and it's probably a bit harder to get hold of data as an estate agent in Northern Ireland. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely fair. I mean, it's only since COVID did they go online. So even searches took weeks and weeks, where they now can take days. But for the agent to get onto land registry, we can do it at a hefty charge. But I say it's time consuming as well, as as you have over in England.
Yeah. And obviously we're 20EA are a prop tech supplier to estate agents, and I know many suppliers don't actually kind of operate really in Northern Ireland because they can't actually get their products to work because they're so reliant on data which they can't get their hands on.
Yeah, unfortunately that is the case. We had one that was pretty great we could have signed up with, but because of land registry and them offering guarantee, AML checks, couldn't, because land registry was going to cost too much.
Okay, well, little plug for 20EA. Our data is quite good in Northern Ireland, so we can chat about that another time. But let's move on. So I want to look at what we call supply. So that we measure supply in terms of the number of new instructions coming to market, and I want to look at that versus kind of the overall stock volume. So this is what percentage of the property's residential stock is coming to market. Now, in fourth place this time we have Northern Ireland, so only 2.6% of all residential properties actually came to market so far this year. Scotland, it was a bit higher, so 3.4%, Wales 4.2%, and then England have the most amount of properties, relatively speaking, coming to market, so about 5% of all stock coming to market. So Stuart, England properties are more likely to come to market, which I suppose is good for estate agents. Have you got any thoughts onto why that is?
I think it's just more of a transient marketplace, if that makes sense. I mean, even so, at 5%, it's still pretty low, really, when you compare it to other countries like Australia, for example. For the amount of residential properties that are there, they will typically get 50% more moves than we do, perhaps. So I was actually really surprised about the other countries, apart from Northern Ireland, where I knew people tend to stay in their properties for a hell of a lot longer than they do elsewhere in the UK. So no, not a great deal to add. It's the first time I've looked at any kind of stock turn numbers for the whole of the UK, but it's obviously beneficial. The one thing that you must add on to this is the thing that we're coming up to talk about next, which is, okay, well, that's one thing, but once they're on the market, how likely are they to sell?
Yeah.
Because if you get 5% of properties appearing on the marketplace each year and only 2.5% of those sell, that's a different factor.
Yeah, and well, let's move on to that, I think. So Yeah, you're exactly right. The property is only worth having if it goes on to sell. Now, we've looked at the likelihood to sell. So this is what proportion of properties go on to exchange, and it's really interesting actually. So there's a clear divide between Scotland and Northern Ireland, where you have, if you list a property, you've got a pretty good chance of going on to exchange on that property and earn some money, and Wales and England, where it's a bit of a coin toss,
Yeah.
whether you actually go on and you spend all that money on marketing, whether you actually get paid at the end of it. So just to run through those numbers and the stark contrast. So England are propping up the rear here. So only 52% of all instructions in England go on to exchange. Wales is slightly better at 55%. But then in Scotland, you've got 78% of properties go on to exchange, and Northern Ireland, the clear winner, over 80% of properties go on to exchange, which is obviously what most vendors want at the end of the whole process. So, yeah, perhaps what I think I understand why in Scotland. So, John, obviously, there's a slightly different legal system in Scotland. So, perhaps touch on that, on why you think there's a significantly higher proportion of properties selling in Scotland than England and Wales.
There's a few points probably behind it. So in Scotland, you have the home report.
Yeah.
So that's it's a single survey around the property condition, etc. It's a questionnaire itself about the property, council tax band and so on. There's a valuation that's part of that, which gives you, the inspection's is done by a visual inspection, so by a surveyor. So if you want a more detailed survey, you can purchase that separately. But the home report contains all of this, a kind of an information pack, includes the valuation as well as the EPC. And that leads to quite well-informed buyers. So the buyers then make bids. We have an open-ended, so it's offers over. So it's a kind of like a blind auction, I suppose. It can go to fixed price if your property's kind of struggling to sell. Some properties go to fixed price. New build tends to be fixed price. But because of the offers over, then you will have a good chance of getting particularly in a reasonable market, of getting an offer that's, a good bit over valuation and the home report.
Yeah.
And that entices the seller to sell. And then the legal process itself, it kind of locks you in after the missives are agreed. So once you agree the conditions of the sale, then if you want to pull out, you've got to pay the other party's costs.
Yeah.
So that kind of ties you in. And in Scotland, we don't tend to have, it's not legal gazumping, but we don't tend to have it for that reason, or gazundering. Yeah.
And Kelly, obviously, when you look at those stats, I bet you'd be loving most agents in Wales would probably love a kind of 80% exchange rate.
our fall through rate is less than that. We have a sales progression team, so people that are focused on handling those transactions, but only because of sort of the high fall through rate that we do experience. We obviously want to get as many across the line as we can. So ours is, close to I'd say mid-high 20s, but still quite a significant amount. And I think the point of not having any financial recourse if you just change your mind would be a deterrent to other people, especially down in our market in Pembrokeshire. There's a lot of second home purchases, so they're not emotional sales all the time. They're sometimes on a whim, you're down for the day or the weekend and it's a great idea. And it's not stereotyping slightly, but it's not your dream one move, your residential move. So maybe less thought is going into it beforehand. So we do have people changing their mind, I'd say, more often because there is no consequence to deciding against it.
Yeah. And Mary Lou, you're the clear winner in this category. I know you were probably a bit surprised when you saw the stats for England.
It's very interesting to see those stats, honestly, because as much as we hope all our sales go through, it's until you look back at the data that you can see it happening. I mean, it's fantastic to see so many go through. I guess what I'd mentioned previously was that we have been working with the Law Society of Northern Ireland and Property Mark and RICS to build a better buying and selling process. So that works with all the professions to make sure that communication is key, right from the professional people and the property to connect the chain as such. And quite interestingly, that is good to see, because we have had a lot of chains in our market over the last 8 months. Whereas 2023 was a difficult market with the mortgage rates going up so much, and even into the start of this year, it was interesting to see so many first-time buyers come to the market. A lot of downsizers are on the market, and a lot of that's not selling. Any of the more expensive property is tending to sit on the market. So the stats are exceptional to see, and maybe the agreement between the conveyancing solicitors, estate agents, and surveyors to communicate and get a better process is working better than we expected.
And I know there's a move to more upfront information in kind of England and Wales especially. So it's interesting that Scotland obviously have the home report, and it appears to, in looking at the data, it appears to help in some respects. So it'd be interesting to see kind of, I know there's lots of various stakeholders who will all kind of have their varied interests, but it makes sense
material
that it will
information
help.
parts B and C now as well,
Yeah.
to make sure that there's that additional weight on the agent to collect that data up front. So hopefully that there's less reasons, a week or two down the line, that something pops up that they weren't already aware of, or somebody wasn't made aware of. So hopefully that'll help. Yeah,
great. Well, let's move on to the next topic. So we're looking at the growth in sales agreed volumes. So this is how we measure as a business demand. So if sale agreeds are up, it indicates that there's more buyers and more demand in the market as a kind of immediate metric. Now, England wins this one. So sales agreed so far this year are up 17% on 2023, which is significant growth actually, and obviously we're starting to see a lot of that filtering into transactions, and we're in terms of completed transactions, we're going to have a really strong start to the year and good start to next year because of that that demand. It's much of a muchness with the other three places, so really good growth again. So in second place we've got Wales with 12% growth in demand. Scotland is basically neck and neck, and Northern Ireland as well. So I think all across the UK, the market we've seen a rise in instructions and a rise in demand and growth. And I think probably something you touched on, Mary Lou, interest rates have come down on 2023. And I think there's a lot more perhaps confidence and sentiment in the market, which is probably the reason for that. But is that kind of what you're seeing out on the ground in your local kind of towns and markets, that there has been a lot more deals being done this year?
There has been, and I feel like there are buyers waiting as well, holding up, waiting to see where they come down to. Rates are waiting. So I feel like not only are we having good levels of buyers, but I feel like there are buyers waiting in the wings that aren't quite ready to commit yet, because they're waiting to see if there's a better rate that's going to be next month or the month after, post budget, etc. So I feel confident about going into 2025.
Yeah, great. John?
Yeah. I mean, the modest drop in the base rate was a big help, because mortgage rates then fell off the back of it. Signs are going back up again now, which is a concern. But I think the forecast, or nearly every economist now is forecasting that there's going to be another quarter point reduction later this week, which again will give the market up a kind of a modest, boost in the arm. But I think, the sound from the Bank of England, the sound from the markets are that interest rates are still going to stay relatively high into 2025. So the hope that they would come down to 3% or lower by the end of 2025, I think, is gone, particularly off the back of the budget and the increase in borrowing. So the markets now only seem to be pricing in a 0.5% cut next year. But it's going in the right direction, and that's what confidence in the market is about. It's, if you think that interest, or the future direction of interest rates and mortgage rates is down rather than up, that's going to incentivise you to purchase.
Great. And Mary Lou, how are you finding kind of buyer sentiment in Northern Ireland?
It's pretty much exactly the same, because there's a lot of them either are desperate to move now, so they are, or potentially waiting for the next rate each month as it goes along. We have that with new builds, actually. Some of them were waiting a couple of months for that. But yeah, demand is still quite good here. So with the rates, seeing what they're going to do, obviously it was very exciting before the budget came out. And we have a lot of work to do since that to see what happens with the Bank of England, as well as then, the mortgage rates. It's it's never a dull job in our line of work, really.
we'll move on to price reductions next. And again, this was really interesting looking at the data, and it really kind of mirrors the previous discussion around how likely it is to sell. So in England and Wales, 40% of all properties in 2024 have had a price reduction, which is really high. It's been the highest for a number of years. And I think a lot of agents I speak to in England and Wales, especially at the start of the year, vendors were really unrealistic with their pricing and pricing it too high, and stuff just obviously wasn't selling at that price, and they were having to reduce and reduce. Now, interestingly, it doesn't appear to have happened to the same extent in Northern Ireland and Scotland. So Scotland, only 21% of stocks had a price reduction, and in Northern Ireland, it's only 20%. So there's a few questions around this. Is overvaluing less of an issue in Scotland and Northern Ireland? Obviously, we've got the offers over that you've discussed, John. Are estate agents better in Northern Ireland and Scotland, more accurate at valuation? Are vendors more realistic? What's going on here? Why do you think this is? Why is there such a big difference?
For us in Pembrokeshire, I think we touched on earlier today that there's some contributing factors really. One was the hangover post-COVID when we saw a bit of a hike in prices because the demand was so high when nobody could go anywhere. So people wanted to come down to the coast and found that our prices were reasonable in comparison to places like Devon, Cornwall. So that there was a surge of artificial price hike there. So we had some vendors thinking that was where the bar was set. We also then had estate agents that were when that started to dry up and there weren't as many instructions that were starting, I think, to either keep that value trend going or were tempted to overvalue to win the fewer instructions that were coming to the market. So I feel like you said there's contributing factors, and it's taken a while for us in Pembrokeshire anyway to educate vendors about the market and where we are, where's realistic, and also taken a while to see, to be able to prove evidence, give them some land registry data or some sold data that we could say this is where your property is at, this is what's sold recently, and I feel like there was a bit of a standoff at the beginning of the year between vendors and buyers to where was the market going to settle. I feel like we've kind of got to that place now, so there are a lot more price reductions happening, which I think is a good thing because I feel like it's going to bring the market down to the right level of the realistic level where transactions are going to start taking place.
Mary Lou, so you obviously won this round. So only 20% of all properties in Northern Ireland have had a price reduction. What do you put that down to? Just explain to me a bit more around the valuation process and your discussions with vendors.
To be honest, same as in Wales, there's a hell of a lot of overpricing to particularly win business, or you have the downsizers who are trying to do one last big sale to then downsize into something with no mortgage to get away from the mortgage aspect of things. So those high prices have sat for a long time. I'm surprised we don't have more price reductions, which I think we will come in line with after sitting on the market for 11 months now. Some of these houses are too expensive and need to adjust. But I do believe it's in relation to buyer demand, about how motivated the buyers we have had are and have been. They literally know what they want to move, they have their plan and they do it. So we have seen in my 23 years, I've definitely seen less sales fall through, which is great. But it is also in relation to the sales progression, the communication, trying to connect the chain at all costs in respect because the people are motivated and want to move. And I'm potentially consumer awareness and understanding the factors of the buying and selling process.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think in Scotland, what you get with the home report is that kind of independent, objective, seen as reasonably fair valuation of what the property is, and you get that right at the outset. And normally with the offers over, you set it maybe just a little bit behind the home report, in the hope that through the the blind bidding process, that you get something in excess of home report, and then it's really dependent on market conditions. And buyers and sellers, I think, are kind of conscious of this, so they know in a good market that they're going to have to be, a strong market with a strong demand, that they're probably going to have to be 10 to 15% over, the offers over price. In a poorer market, maybe they can get it around about the offers over price, and under home report. but it gives you that kind of bar or level that people can kind of work around in a fairly objective way.
Yeah, great. We'll come on to online agents now. So we track what type of agents are listing property, so more traditional agents or online. It's fairly close in this category. So the market share of online agents is highest in England, just with 5.4%, closely followed by Wales with 5.3%, Scotland with 4.8%, and then a bit of a gap to Northern Ireland with 3.5%. Now the biggest obviously is Purple Bricks, and there are others. But again, perhaps turning to you, Mary Lou, online agents don't appear to be a major threat in Northern Ireland. Would that be fair? And it's still more the traditional agents who are gaining most of the share?
Yeah, it's very fair. You rarely see any Purple Bricks or a couple of the new EXP, which is self-employed tool. But obviously, no, it's more high street, and the agents that have been there probably, and yeah, I haven't seen much of it.
Yeah, and interesting. So the online market share is declining all over the UK, and we've tracked this for many years. Conversely, though, self-employed, and you did mention one of them there, that obviously over in Northern Ireland now, the self-employed market share is skyrocketing, and they are on massive, getting massive growth in the UK. Now, I'm going to turn to Kelly for this one, because I believe you have just launched a self-employed model as part of your agency. So
Yes.
Perhaps just tell me a bit about why you've done that and kind of how that works and how you came to that decision.
There were a few reasons, and we look at the trend. There's clearly a demand for it. Estate agents want that autonomy. That also then was coupling with me looking at staff that we'd lost over the years or couldn't do the job anymore because of the lack of flexibility around the office, and how we might mitigate that. People that were really good but they wanted or couldn't work the traditional hours, they needed that flexibility. So after a lot of thought, to me it seemed like the next sensible step. There's going to be people that want to go down that route, and they're going to do it. They're going to choose a competitor, a large corporate competitor, or they could, if we had an offering that would create a pathway for current staff and from maybe other agents that weren't offering it around us, that they could do that pathway through our core brand as well. And one in Pembrokeshire, obviously I'll talk to that because that's what I know. No one's really got a foothold there, because down with us, people like to know who they're dealing with. They like to know the brand, and that's the advantage that we've got. So I think there's one or two agents from others and national self-employed brands, but that's really it. And so we thought that by launching this, it would create opportunities and solve some problems that we were facing as an industry, or as a company as well, retaining good members of staff, giving them flexibility. So it wasn't about pushing our employed staff to it. We've still got our core brand. We've still got all of our employed staff. We actually had some employed staff that want to go and do it, which was great. They were thrilled by it. We had estate agents from competitors contact us because they were interested in potentially doing it. Some people, they want to earn a lot more money. They want to work really hard and work ridiculous hours, and they want to be earning 100 grand more. And I want to be able to create that opportunity for the people that want that, and they don't rest or want the confines of an office or the traditional, basic salary plus your commission. So we really just looked at a number of aspects and came up with an idea.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating area. It's for what it's worth, I think in 3 years' time, self-employed agents will be 20% of the market.
Yeah.
It's that big. It's growing so fast, and I know in Scotland you've got the likes of Remax, Keller Williams, EXP to an extent. So do you discuss it much internally, the self-employed models, or is it less of a?
It's probably less of an issue at the moment. The online for a time, was a kind of a rising threat in the market, but that seems to have dissipated. But in Scotland, it's heavily business or competitors. We're an independent property company, but our main rivals, if you like, are the solicitors' property centres, or those agents that are affiliated with a solicitor property centre, particularly in Edinburgh, because the ESPC and that brand is quite strong. So that market, particularly between say 200 and 400, which we compete in. They've got they've got a strong presence in that market. And then when you get above about 500,000, it tends to be us and the nationals. So, the likes of Savills and Knight Frank, that's who the main competition there is.
Yeah.
So if you look at it on a market share basis, those firms at the moment, aren't in the top 10 in the main locations.
Yeah. Right. Next, we're going to look at the time it actually takes to sell a property in each respective country. So there's a clear winner in the average time to sell. So we measure that in the number of days to find a buyer and the first sold subject to contract. So in first place here, unsurprisingly, is Scotland. So the average this year is 48 days to arrange a sale. We've then got England at 73 days. Northern Ireland 79 days, and Wales in last place again, sorry Kelly, with 83 days. Now I think we know the reasons why. We've already covered the home buyer report, the home report, sorry, which I think helps, and you can see the difference that makes. Sales get agreed much quicker in Scotland. And if we turn to the average time it takes to actually progress a sale, so I suppose this is all around the sales progression and the conveyancing piece. Again, there is a clear winner with Scotland. So on average, it only takes 88 days. A lot of agents in England would kill for that number. In second place, we've got Wales at 112 days, England 123 days, and Northern Ireland, it's a whopping 153 days, according to our data, to progress a sale, which is a long time. Perhaps John, just obviously the overall number from instruction to completion is obviously a lot quicker than the rest of the UK, and it's probably good for your management because you get paid a lot quicker. But one thing we haven't perhaps touched on, and not perhaps everyone listening to this will be aware, is a lot of the estate agency firms are solicitor practices, aren't they? So the kind of conveyancing is naturally baked into the estate agency side. Do you want to perhaps just touch on that?
Yeah. And again, it tends to be a part of the market. So, particularly under the solicitors' property centres are strong under around about 350,000 or thereabouts. And that's really where the bulk of the market is in the country.
Yeah.
Most sales, vast majority sales will transact under that price. And yeah, they're a kind of solicitors' property centres are kind of a confederation of local agents and solicitors who, it's a kind of a, sounds like I'm giving an advert here for some of my competitors, but what they try to do is that kind of seamless process through the system. But you'll also find agencies like ourselves also have good established links with solicitors' practices, and we will tend to use those practices that can get the business done quicker. I think the other advantage Scotland has is, as was mentioned earlier, is that the volume of sales coming onto the market isn't as great as maybe it is down south, and therefore you can deal with them quicker.
Yeah, great. And Mary Lou, so 153 days average from sale agreed to completion sounds like an awfully long time, but ironically, a lot of these sales are still going through, as we saw earlier. And usually when it takes longer to kind of agree sale, there's more people pulling out and falling through. But you seem to be a bit of an anomaly in that case. But talk me through a bit the conveyancing process in Northern Ireland and why you think it's perhaps a bit longer than the rest of the UK.
Well, honestly, I mean, we used to be taking 6 months to complete on a sale, and it has lowered down to 3. So,
well, it's probably maybe your agents, maybe you're just excellent at it compared to the rest.
Of course, property market there. Well, again, with what John says, is the respect for, if you have a really good relationship with your conveyancing solicitors locally, and you have a good relationship with your clients, you can scale them to go at a certain level of time. Now, don't get me wrong, we had a lot of a battle through talking to conveyancers who were doing nothing with the file until the first time buyer at the bottom of the chain, finally got a mortgage offer. And that meant you were already 6 to 8 weeks with no work done. So what we've been trying to do with the Law Society and Property Mark is to get the material information straight away, do the PIQ questionnaire from us to the client to then the solicitor, get the solicitor instructed before we go to the market, get the searches started before we go to the market, cut out 8 to 12 weeks timeline of conveyancing at the very start, and then when we get a buyer, which we tend to do within a 2 to 3 week period, then you should be able to go through a 2.5 month. It does take the guts of a month to get the paperwork in order here in the conveyancing side. Some property certificates will or can take 3 weeks. Mortgages do only take about a fortnight. But if you can entwine those all within a 6-week period, there's no reason it should take 4 more months to complete. I know they do happen, but there's, if you have a better system in place, it shouldn't take 153 days. Seems a lot, to be honest.
Well, it just shows if that's the average, there's obviously some agencies out there still taking a lot longer than that. So yeah, it's interesting to see. Now, I think finally we just want to look at the level of competition we've got in each country. So we've never really looked at this before, as far as I'm aware, Stuart, but the way we did this was we looked at the number of sales branches, and so the number of estate agents per 100,000 residential properties, to work out how competitive each country is, really. The least competitive market, which is probably good for if you're an estate agency owner, is Scotland. So Scotland has 47 agents per 100,000 people to compete with. In second place, Northern Ireland with 53. Wales have 76 per 100,000. And England, have 61 per 100,000. So yeah, it was interesting to look at that. I know we said we wouldn't talk about London, but I will just mention London. So London have 137 agents per 100,000 properties, which is well over half everywhere else. Mm-hmm. So it's super, super competitive in London. If you actually do the maths, if only 5% of those are coming to the market, that's not a lot of business for each one of those, so interestingly. But yeah, it's, I don't know, I'll open this to the floor. Any observations on that? Does it feel like it's you've not got much competition in Scotland?
quite the contrary.
Yeah.
But I suppose it is all relative, compared to other places. But no, I mean, we feel as if we are in a very competitive market, and you can see that with the the pricing. You can't really go above a certain level with the fee, otherwise you'll find yourself losing business very quickly.
Yeah.
I think it's felt the same for me, really. It's always been competitive. Now we just have to be able to educate our vendors, because there are more, say, self-employed agents or national brands coming down to the area as well. Some of my vendors had a London agent, a doorstop, the other day. So people are trying to break into bigger areas. People aren't needing offices, I think, to feel like they can operate in those areas as well. So that's another level. But I think educating your clients to what they get from your brand and your operation versus competitors is probably the best way to go about it. But yeah, I feel like it's really competitive.
Yeah, great.
Sorry, I was just going to say, we have to remember that the prices are a lot higher in London
Yeah.
than they are in the rest of the UK.
I was going to.
But
We said we weren't going to talk about this.
If they can do less transactions for a lot more money.
I was just going to say, even taking that into account, it's still quite a lot of competition, more competition than it is in the rest of England. Anyway.
Yeah.
I just literally did not expect that.
The stark difference.
Yeah.
Right, we're nearing the end now, but I just really quickly wanted to touch on portals, actually, while I've got you all here. So England and Wales, Rightmove has pretty much a monopoly, and agents have a view on Rightmove, but they're kind of stuck with Rightmove. Now, I know in Northern Ireland, Scotland, yes, you'd probably argue you're still reliant on portals, but actually Rightmove aren't as big in Scotland, definitely in Northern Ireland. And again, many people watching this might not be aware of that. So it'd be interesting just to, I know in Scotland you have more of the property centres, don't you? And in Northern Ireland you've got Property Pal and Property News, who believe have just merged. But just for the audience who probably aren't aware, perhaps you could just explain what the portal landscape's like. I'll start in Northern Ireland. Mary Lou.
Yeah, well, I mean, we do obviously rely on our portals for one. There was a bit of a difficulty the year before last with the portals. But then agents started to rebuild their own websites, which was good. For such a small country, really, it is a niche market where we can be more competitive with the portals, where vendors will go and buyers will go to the estate agents' websites. So we're building on that. We've also a new portal called Homes NI. So there's more competition for the portals now that the two main ones merge together. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years, because I think there was a poll done with our portals and it wasn't buyers on the portals, it was consumers just watching the property market. And if you do drive buyers to agents' websites and regulated bodies and things, they'll be more aware of there's more ways to find out about a property.
And in England, Rightmove, Zoopla, and On the Market are the top three. Do you list with any of those, or are they?
No. I was contacted by Zoopla, because a couple of the other agents are on it. But if you search Northern Ireland, it's not coming up. So there'd be no sense to do it. I think genuinely most of our buyers in the last 2 to 3 years moving from England, whether they're Northern Irish based, living in England, working in England, moving home, or they're from England, realizing prices are better, coming here, they really are always searching the local portals.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And John, just in Scotland, how does it work in Scotland for buyers?
Yeah, sounds again like I'm doing an advertorial for solicitors' property centres, but they provide up a kind of joined up marketing service, including portals for their businesses, which I said is local agents and solicitors kind of working together under a kind of federation structure. But that's not to say that Rightmove is very big in Scotland, as it is everywhere else. It is, and you've also got On the Market and Zoopla that have a presence. I mean, we list, our 10th list was Rightmove and On the Market. Obviously, we can't list with the solicited property centres because you need to be a member in order to do that. But they've got a bit of the market share just because of that local presence.
Yeah.
How big are the SPCs in Scotland?
It varies from geography to geography. In Edinburgh, they're pretty big, so they will certainly have the bulk of the market share under about 300,000 or so. Glasgow, not so big. Used to be bigger, but not so big in Glasgow. And Aberdeen, they've got a reasonable presence as well, the ASPC. So, yeah, you get them kind of dotted around the country, but usually in the main cities.
Well, one of my friends recently moved to Elgin, of all places, or in the surrounding area, and he was having to use Zoopla to track properties and stuff like that because of the fact that Rightmove didn't have a presence in the micro area that he was in, for some reason, which, as Paul says, is unheard of in England.
Yeah. I mean, there will be small localities where there isn't that kind of Rightmove presence, but the ESPC, the Aberdeen Solicitor Property, I think covers. That's in Murray, Elgin. So I think that covers that part of the market as well.
Right. Well, we've reached the end of our discussion, and we do have a winner. Now, I was jotting down the scores as we were going along, and I'll perhaps do it in reverse order. So in last place, picking up the wooden spoons, I'm sorry, Kelly, it's Wales with 21 points. Next, Stuart, we have England with 27 points, bronze medal. In second place, it's closely run, but we have Northern Ireland. Congratulations, Mary Lou. But in first place with 33 points, we have Scotland. So, John, Scotland is the best country in the UK to be operating an estate agency. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. After Six Nations tables like that by the end of it, I'll be happy.
Unfortunately, I don't have I don't have a prize on me, but perhaps I can buy you a beer before your flight back to Edinburgh, and as a congratulations. But no,
Scottish beer.
Okay. But no, jokes aside, it's been really interesting to learn about some other markets today, which are often neglected when we're discussing the UK. So thanks very much for joining me, and we look forward to speaking to you soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.